Hey TPT sellers, in this episode, I'm going to walk you through how to find the best keywords on the TPT seller blog. So the TPT seller blog has a category called data and growth. I just published the list for January to March, and I see now that they have top TPT searches for April, May, and June. So clearly I need to update my list again. Oh, Mike, I've got to remake this. Alrighty, I know what I'm doing. All right, I'm back. I updated my resource to have the most up-to-date data for April, May, and June, but I'm going to start the conversation by looking at the trending TPT searches for January, February, March, because we're in the middle of February right now, and the popularity data that we can get through keyword tools only shows us trends in the last 7 days. So that's why the information from the TPT seller blog is way better than anything that I could provide or any other third-party keyword tool could provide, because TPT has access to the raw data. They are a primary source of information, whereas keyword tools are a secondary source of information. If you're on a page that has a bunch of keywords and you want to make sure you're looking at the right month, just scroll up to the top, click on data and growth, and these posts are sorted by most recently updated. So I can see here they have top TPT searches in April, May, and June. And if I scroll down, you have to be careful because what they're doing is they're updating the resource. So this first section here, which is top TPT search opportunities, is for information from 2023. But if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a section called Top TPT Search Keyword Opportunities. These search terms below had a relatively lower number of results compared to how often buyers were searching for them in April, May, and June of 2024. But for this first part of the video, I'm going to use the data from January to March. It's listing keyword opportunities on TPT based on the data from last year, 2024, looking at January, February, and March. And right now it's February 2025. TPT tells us that terms with the highest interest and fewest results are listed first. And in this episode, we'll talk about what I think that actually means. And if I scroll down to the bottom, there's an important disclaimer that says that these top search terms lists are just intended to provide insights into the selected time period as a reference only. They are not a guarantee of what search terms may be popular in future years. Sometimes I'll chat with TPT sellers and they'll wonder, well, why are they listing solar eclipse in this list? Because that was only a keyword that's popular last year. It's not going to be a keyword that's popular this year. So they should have taken it off the list. And I'm glad that they didn't, because that makes me trust this information a little bit more. They're showing us an unfiltered list of the top search keywords that had a relatively lower number of results. So if I use the Pro Keyword tool and type in solar eclipse, I can see that phrase solar eclipse has a popularity rank of 42, and there are only 4,627 results for that keyword. So this keyword is still a good keyword to go after. But solar eclipse is not going to have the same amount of traffic as last year because the solar eclipse in 2024 was special. Now, if you look at that TPT seller blog list, you might think that all of those are good to create a resource for because they have few competitors. But of course, that's not always the case. If I scroll down to word number 90, which is Valentine's Day, if I search up Valentine's Day, I can see that term is wildly popular right now. On February 18th, it has a popularity rank of 22,000. So the popularity is starting to go down because Valentine's Day, the 14th, has already passed. But creating a resource for Valentine's Day means I'm competing with 200,000 competitors. I'm not going to be able to rank for that. And if I scroll down to the end of the list, down to 496, I can see that reading comprehension made it to the list of top 500. And if I look up reading comprehension, I can see the popularity rank is around 2540 right now, and there are 710,000 results. And then this is usually the point that we complain and we get mad at TPT for having the audacity for listing keywords that have so many competitors. How can they possibly get onto a list called keyword opportunities? In this episode, I'm going to walk us through how to find the real gems of that list and find keyword niche unicorns, keywords that have higher search volume and lower competition. Hi, my name is Mike Fuchigami, and I am the host of the SEOTpreneur YouTube community. This episode is for TPT tadpoles, TPT hamsters, and TPT hawks, because we know from experience, you can create awesome resources, but if they don't get seen, then no one buys them. And so then an important part of the game is careful keyword selection so that we can rank on page 1, get seen, get a few sales, level up our TPT SEO rank, grow the snowball, and eventually we start to rank higher for those shorter term keywords. Now, in the past, I would have said this episode is just for tadpoles, hamsters, and hawks, but I've been chatting with some top sellers and they're using that keyword list as well to come up with ideas for product creation. So I've updated TPT seller tip number 18. It was free when I first launched it in November. Hopefully you got it then. If you don't, the ultimate bundle is the best way to get all of my resources on my TPT seller store. But if I download this resource, you'll see in the PDF that there are different versions depending on which keywords you're looking for. So I'm going to start with the January, February, March version. And then later in this episode, I'll look at the April, May, and June version. So basically, I copied that list of 500 keywords and I put it into this Google Sheet with the popularity search volume score and the number of competitors as of February 15th, 2025. So here are the top 500 keywords. I included the number of reviews that the products have, because number of reviews is an indication of how many sales that resource has. But for this video, I'm just going to hide that. And that way we can focus on the number of resources and the popularity score of these resources. So I'm going to sort the popularity. And I can see here that at the time the data was saved, Valentine's Day has a popularity score of 27,000, and there are 180,000 resources here. I can't compete with 180,000 resources. So one of the cool things about this tool is in the yellow cell here, there's a number for minimum and maximum. So I'm going to set the maximum number of competitors to 10,000. And now what I can see are the resources from that TPT list that have a high popularity with relatively few competitors. And if I'm creating a brand new resource, then maybe I want to go after resources that have fewer than 5,000 competitors. So let's change this to 5,000. Or maybe I only want to go after keywords that have 3,000 competitors. So then creating a resource for Jackie Robinson might be a great idea. In the middle of February, it has a popularity rank of 818, and there's only 2,900 competitors. So with fewer competitors, I have a better chance of ranking on page 1. Now, if I scroll down here, there are some keywords like Chinese New Year 2024 that have a popularity rank of 0. But if Chinese New Year 2024 was a popular term last year, then Chinese New Year 2025 was probably a popular term this year. But I wanted to show you this because some keywords have a popularity rank of 0 at the time that I looked it up in the keyword tool, which is February 15th, 2025. So we have to take these popularity numbers with a grain of salt because we don't have access to the raw data and we can't count the number of searches for January, February, March, like TPT is doing. So now let me show you the keywords for April, May, and June. I'm just going to make a copy here. So this data snapshot was taken on February 17th, 2025. And if I go to the real TPT uniter, if I sort this by popularity, I always find it interesting that digital resources shows up here because I've often thought that digital resources is pinned to the top of that list, that it's not actually a term that people search organically. But if I scroll down in this popularity list, so let's say I want to find keywords that have to do with end of year. So I'm going to search up here and I can see here that in the middle of February, people aren't really searching up end of the year activity. But it makes sense that in May and June, this is going to be a keyword. These keywords, end of the year activities, I would be competing with 240,000 competitors. So the way that I would use this April, May, June keyword finder is I'm just going to get rid of the search term. I'm going to turn off the popularity sort. And I'm just going to say, hey, I want to find resources that have fewer than 5,000 competitors. And if I sort this from smallest to largest, I don't know what the popularity volume is going to be like yet, but I have to trust that the popularity search was high last year. So it will hopefully be high again this year. And now here's a list of keywords. And now I have to find the keywords that apply to my store. If you learned something new, can you please hit that like button because it lets me know that this is the kind of content that you like and I should make more of this. So the real question is, how does the TPT seller blog come up with this list of keyword opportunities? I have a theory. This is a chart showing the top 500 keywords at the bottom for January, February, and March. And on the vertical column, we're looking at the number of resources. And although a lot of the keywords are here at the bottom with few resources, we have things like Valentine's Day with 180,000 resources, fractions with a similar number, Easter has 440,000 resources, reading comprehension has 740,000 resources. So because we see these outliers, we know that they're not doing a hard cap like, hey, find the most popular search terms that have fewer than 5,000 competitors. So here's what I think TPT is doing. They first count all of the searches within that time period from January, February, March. So they add the number of searches on the first, and they add that to the number of searches on the second, and they add that to the number of searches on the third. And they do this for all of the days between January to March. Then I think they're counting the number of resources for those keywords. So on the front end, which is what you and I can see, if we type up solar eclipse, we can see that there's 4,627 results. They do this on the back end for each of their keywords, and they come up with a number of resources. And then what I think they do next is they calculate a score for each keyword by taking the search volume and dividing it by the number of resources. So they're figuring out a ratio, and keywords that have a lot of search volume and very few resources will have a much higher score. Now, I wish they would tidy the data. I don't think they're doing this. But if we go back to this chart showing keywords versus the number of resources, reading comprehension is not a keyword opportunity. I'm sure it's a keyword opportunity compared to other keywords, but trying to come up with a new resource that's going to compete with 740,000 resources, it's just not going to happen. Even for large sellers, because when large sellers put out a resource, they still face the same problems that you and I do in terms of trying to get sales, trying to get seen, trying to rank on page 1. A big competitive advantage that they have is they've amassed a lot of followers and a lot of email subscribers. So they can direct more people to a new resource easier than you and I can. But I wish TPT would filter the data and say something like, hey, regardless of this score, if a keyword has more than 50,000 resources or 100,000 resources, we're just going to take them off the list. So I don't think TPT is actually tidying up the data. They're just giving us a list of keywords based on this score of search volume divided by number of resources. And then they just share the top 500, or at least that's what they did for January, February, March. We can see they go down to 500 keywords. In April, May, and June, when they give us their top TPT search keyword opportunities, they're only giving us the top 250. And I think that might be in response to TPT sellers complaining like, hey, not all these keywords are actually doable. So then the first 250 is probably better than some of the latter ones. But we know from mapping out the keywords against the number of resources, there are still a lot of good keywords like B&D reversals that has 1,000 competitors. B&D reversals might be an underserved niche, but it won't show up on a list if we cut it off at 250. So rather than chopping the list horizontally, I think we should chop the list vertically and only return keywords that have fewer than 50,000 competitors, for example. So what does it look like if I create a chart showing us keywords versus this score? On the bottom, we have the keywords going from the top 1 to 500. And on the vertical column, we have this score, which is the search volume divided by the number of resources. In theory, we would expect a nice relationship where all the dots lined up on a line and higher scores on the left-hand side and lower scores on the right-hand side. In practice, we don't see things lining up as nicely, and that's because it's impossible for me to know the popularity score over 3 months. From the Algolia manual, the popularity score that we're able to get is based on the number of searches in the last 30 days. Now, recently, a TPT seller showed me some data suggesting that the popularity score might be actually based on the last 7 days, which completely surprised me because the Algolia manual doesn't mention anything about being able to change this number. But I'm doing some tracking to see if I can independently confirm their data as well. So that'll come out in a future video. So the search volume that we can get from the outside of Team TPT is only based on this small window, whereas the developers on Team TPT have access to the entire search database. So they would be able to come up with the popularity score for the entire 3 months. So that's why even though we don't see all the dots lining up on the line, I think this score of search volume divided by number of resources is one way that TPT is generating this list. What do you think? What would make this list of keyword opportunities more useful for you as a TPT seller? I think it's genius that Team TPT is putting out this list of search keyword opportunities for us because these are underserved areas on TPT. And if TPT sellers can fill in the gaps with strong quality resources, then teachers and students win. But let me know in the comments what you would like to see from the TPT seller blog in terms of keyword opportunities. By the way, registration for the March bootcamp is now open. In the January bootcamp, a TPT seller wrote that the fact that I am up 31% this month over last year, and there are 11 more days left is very motivating. I love that feedback. If you'd like to learn more, check out SEOTpreneur.com/bootcamp. You can see what other TPT sellers are saying about the bootcamp. It's a 4-week program with 2 bonus weeks. We meet on Sundays. It's a Zoom class that's recorded, so you can watch the video if you can't make the session. The first meeting is coming up this weekend on Sunday, February 23rd. If you have any questions, just ask in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye now.